Hi, welcome to DMG Now Live, the show for agencies by agencies. So we decided to go live for a few reasons. One is podcasting's a lot of fun. Maybe we're a little bit lazy and we don't like editing, but the truth is that there's a ton of people podcasting, and we wanted to try something that is a little bit more challenging, something that maybe would break through the noise. Now Live. And the other element is it wanted to be more engaging. We want more participants where we're getting a feedback loop from you, the audience, to contribute to the show because you have a lot to say, as obviously we do if you've listened to season one. And before I get into anything else, I would like to thank everybody for all of our subscribers for following us on YouTube. This is now obviously live on Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube, LinkedIn, and a ton of other platforms as well. But if you could follow us, that would mean the world to me, as well as just like, share, comment. If you want to be a prick, you could even troll a little bit. But the last update I have for this wonderful intro is we did move the DMG event that was going to take place in September. That is now going to take place in 2021, October 4th to the 6th. So now please go to digitalmastermind.com and get your tickets. They're not going to be any less expensive than they are right now. And I would also like to welcome my partner in climb, David McGraw. Why don't you go ahead and join us?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going better now that you're here, buddy. Good to see you.
Yeah, a little intimidating with the live show here, huh?
Yeah. But that's what we set ourselves up to. Let's be, we were heroes in the beginning, right? Where it's just like, this is this thing that we want to do. Well, let's be heroes in the end and see it through.
Let's do it.
All right. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about polluting the internet, the manufacturing of noise on the internet. And this is something that is near and dear to me. In some cases, I've even been a participant in it. But essentially what I'm getting at is how everybody is just treating the internet like a wastebasket for their gain, right?
I mean, if you're talking about that, topic that we discuss all the time, which is that, standard marketing playbook of inbound marketing, where you produce content to try to lure in business. There's a lot of people just hiring contractors out there from all over the world, just producing content that's generic as can be, that's not producing quality content. And to me, that's the number one aspect of pollution on the internet. I mean, is that content really valuable? Do you really have an expert? Is that content quality? I mean, that's, to me,
no, none of it. It's none of those things. And what it is, it's people trying to game something. It's like spam, right? And doing a little bit of research for this, I found out like spam, like the moment email was invented, spam was like right behind it. And somebody figured, okay, I can do this very low effort thing to get this massive gain, right? The smallest input for the most output, which as marketers and business owners, we always want to do that. But it's insane how crazy it is right now. Like just think, like you had the mini sites and these little squeeze pages, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and get a bunch of domains with exact domain matches so I can just go ahead and fill the internet with my crappy material.
Right.
And all right, people did that. Then people did keyword stuffing. It's just this game that marketers are always participating in. And it's like it's like where the romantics should win, they don't win in this game.
Well, it's, Google sets the rules, the search engines set the rules, and the marketers need to, reverse engineer those rules, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get. It's this dance of page rank versus, search engine, and the marketers are going to do whatever it takes to get on page one. And when you have, on some of the keywords, when you've got 200 companies competing for page one, you're going to get whatever tricks work. But here's the thing: the tricks work. That's why everyone's doing it.
They do. And they do for a period of time. I remember when I got into we got into SEO, I don't know, 10, 12 something years ago. And then, you could do all these like little hacks, and whatnot. And then sites would get blacklisted when they would cheat. I can't remember what update it was. It Penguin Panda, Snow Cone. I can't remember which update it was. It was years ago. But it was when you would buy backlinks, because everybody's buying backlinks. Like, all right, cool. I could just get this backlink farm, point them all here. And then they started blacklisting sites, and just the calls that would come in, people asking us to fix this. thing that they cheated and they broke, and they were just so heartbroken that they could no longer cheat. It was kind of like having a conversation with Lance Armstrong. It's like, oh, like, yeah, I know that wasn't supposed to do that, but I can't do this anymore. It's like, no, we're not going to let you on the bike. We're not going to let you do business the way that you were doing business before, because it's polluting the internet. It's not helping anything.
Correct. And tons of companies basically, the snap of a finger and one update, put a bunch of companies out. I mean, does anyone chase backlinks now, or is that's completely?
Oh yeah, no, that's still it's completely changed. So
right, and
there's still it's not link farms. Well, you got guest blog posts. How many emails do we get through our? I know, absolutely. There's so many of them, right? So that's one part of it.
Every time I get that email, though, I'm like, is this still a thing? Like,
it is, yeah. The guest posting, and we've done some of those campaigns in a more thoughtful way for our clients. So there's that. There is also companies that own like private blog networks they call PBNs, and what they'll do is you're essentially it's a link farm, but it looks a little bit different because you can't see all the servers and all the connections between the domains. So that exists.
It's the same model of a corporation owning multiple news outlets, all pushing the same story, all in unison to maximize effect. I mean that model's not new; it's just converted to the internet. But I mean that's the basis of internet pollution right there. A guest post, unless you're like interviewing that guest and that guest is bringing some expert knowledge. What value is blindly letting a guest post put something on your website that's just going to backlink stuff and keyword stuff just to, that's the basis of what I hate about the internet and marketing today.
Yeah, it's and I think it's, how would you put this? It's a numbers game. I think that's the best way to do it. If you ask enough people, for instance, a lot of the ones like, hey, you can do these like thoughtful outreach things. And this is all for gamification of SEO, where somebody's got a broken link and you're like, oh, hey, I found this broken link on your site. Would you want to replace it with this one that we have because our resource is better? So you have that. You also you have scholarship campaigns, which these are pretty good. It's not a big secret. Essentially, you offer a scholarship, you then send that out to every single university that's out there, right? And then in doing that scholarship, $1,000, $2,000, they got a backlink or they got to do something to get those. So there's these more thoughtful ways to go about it, which add value. You're giving some kid $1,000 to do it, but if you're just going to create some really shitty PowerPoint presentation, and then you're going to then add that to SlideShare and like all of these other places and then you're like, okay, it's done because we mentioned, these keywords in it. Like, no, like there's something inherently wrong. There should be a certification that says like, yeah, you follow the rules of suck. And that's what you do, and let the professionals and everybody else that really, give a damn do it this way. Or Google needs to figure it out and penalize it, as well as Bing, DuckDuckGo, and any of those other search engines that maybe have a fraction of the market share.
Well, I have to imagine that Google eventually is going to go to some kind of model where you're just going to have humans decide which sources are the. I mean, they kind of already do that with the SERP. They're kind of automatically creating content on the top of their search pages, which they deem as the authority on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great if you're one of them. But if you're trying to get on top of that and you're not, one of those sources, then it's pretty difficult. But that kind of human intervention of who is the definitive authority, I don't know if that's good for the internet or not. I mean, that kind of gives Google a lot. I mean, they already have an insane amount of power, but I think going forward, if we look at the next, let's say, 8 to 10 years of marketing, I think we're going to see a trend back to the traditional talent of marketing. Like, who can come up with the best messaging? Who can create the best creative? And not necessarily who can stuff the most keywords around the internet with a bunch of BS posting.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're getting there. For instance, design. I don't know. There was a few years ago, algorithm updates. I mean, we have team members that do this. Maybe I should have been a little bit more educated on these, but the behavior, the way that somebody, reacts with the site, bounce rate is now more important than ever. I've seen certain sites, some of our team meetings beat out other sites just because of the way it's designed, whereas the other ones have more backlinks, or they have more of the traditional signals for them. So yeah, I highly agree with that. Messaging, of course, plays into that, and that even also, which was always a factor to some extent when it comes to metadata. But I also think it's interesting that Google claimed that there was like all this AI that was going on, and then when COVID hit, it seems like a lot of the things like stopped working. For instance, like all their Google My Business pages, those aren't being approved because there's so much human interaction that happens on those pages, where it makes you think it's like, it's not as advanced of a company as we thought. Because to me, that seems like something that could automate. You put these in, these triggers match up, and then everybody high fives, and then it's done. But apparently there's more high fives.
A company like Google, I mean, with some of the applications we deal with, I mean, we're talking about millions of records of data. And for the most part, we just let user-generated content, do its thing, and usually other users kind of raise a red flag that, hey, this is bad data, or this is spam, or this is abusive content. I mean, think about Google. Anytime they release some app, they're going to instantly generate terabytes of records. And I mean, you can't just whip out AI to police that content. You're going to need humans, and you're going to need a lot of humans. And I bet you they have giant call centers just of people to review data and approve data and stuff like that. That's got to be a monumental task. I mean, just think of the just insane amount of gigs of, think of how many new websites they have to index every day, just every day.
Yeah.
Insane.
I'm looking up the number of Google employees. I just got to see this number. I wish I had this.
It's got to be over 250,000. It's got to be over 250,000, I imagine.
119,000 full-time staff. That's it. 119,000 people. Like, that's a city.
Yeah, but Google's like one of the biggest companies. Go to Apple. What's Apple looking? I bet you. Well, a company like Apple, are they counting, the people, if there's a Chinese factory that's producing, all
137,000.
How much?
2019. 137,000.
But that's not including all of the warehouse third-party companies that are actually producing.
It maintains 510 retail stores, 25 countries. Yeah, like that. Those are insane. So between those two, it's 250,000. I think that's
wow. That's not as much as I would think.
Really?
Because I mean, if you think of what percentage those two companies by themselves probably are 10% of the total S&P 500, or maybe even more. I mean, Apple is the most valuable company in the world, or it fluctuates between them and Amazon.
Yeah.
Google's right up there as well. I mean, so if you're talking, those are, when you compare revenue, revenue per employee, that's probably a crazy stat. What about Amazon? Can you look them up?
840,000.
Wow. See,
you got to think of their businesses. Amazon is a service-based business. They offer, platforms so you can get products. So there's a lot of logistics that's involved in that. And they keep they're into shipping, right? So they got into the logistics side. So that's part of what they do. The others are software companies. Granted, Apple's a hardware company at the end of the day as well, but that's the beauty of developing software.
But Amazon's also into everything. It's it competes with Google on the cloud. They're competing on their cloud platforms. Well, Amazon has its own tablet and its own phone, so it's competing with Apple on that. I mean, really, Amazon's competing with everyone on every level, and they are pretty dominant. But they produce a pretty phenomenal service. Every time I use Amazon, it's pretty spot on.
I don't know. They've gotten kind of lazy with the Prime, it seems. But this is pre-COVID. Like some things would take like a week or 2 weeks, and supposedly they have some checks and balance system internally. But
so isn't that scary that Amazon has the power? So I noticed that when we hit the COVID and things were challenging to get shipped, and I started getting messages that said, hey, some items are being prioritized higher than others. Because they have so much power and they are so integral in the logistics of this country, doesn't that kind of spark monopoly?
Yeah, that's what Elon Musk was screaming about the other day, that it's time that they be broken up. Yeah, because if they just decide not to sell something, then you might not be able to get it based on all the stores and companies that have shut down because they couldn't compete.
Yeah, I mean, you have They are the gateway. So,
and also think about it. Well, the power that Google has. All these companies, I mean, we're sounding like socialists here, but I mean, these companies have like a ton of power, right? So Google, based on taking off those sites for not following their rules, it's as if they're blocking the street to your business. It's you no longer can get there, like unless you have that exact domain, which that might be on some PDFs and some flyers that you printed. The Apple newsfeed app. We're going to make all these contracts with these news companies and not tell you what our intention is. They're going to get everybody addicted to using this news feed. Sure. And then they're like, oh, you want to read 90% of the content? Well, now you got to pay, $10 to see that. Well, granted, all these companies got to make money, right? Sure. But at the end of the day, if they say like, you're not going to be in our news feed, then dude, like you're SOL.
So it all comes down to money walks, right? So what money talks, because these companies, you just said it, are in it to make money. Mm-hmm. Money is always going to be the access to get where you want to be. So all that internet pollution, all that content, everything you do for organic is never going to be as juicy as just paying for it, right?
I mean, you as the gold makes the rules.
Exactly. So it's almost like the dream scenario is get your organic to the point where you can generate some business well enough so that you just dump that money into your paid and get that churn going. And once you get that churn going, that's where you can actually extend your profit margins. But a lot of people can't get to that point, or they just don't plan well enough to actually have a paid marketing budget. I mean, how many clients do we have that don't even consider, an actual budget for their paid advertising?
Yeah, I'd say, there's a fair amount of them, and we coach them and tell them, but no, they are so hooked on the drug of SEO, right? That this, we're going to set up all these properties online that they're like, why? This has such a great return. I don't need that. And it's going to become more difficult because Google, just based on like their ads and whatnot, the way that they've changed things, it's inherent. Everybody's going to be paying for advertising here in the future.
Sure. And also, with most customers require a certain level of education, right? Because they just don't know what SEO is. And if they did, they wouldn't be hiring us, right? And every time Google changes an algorithm update, which dramatically affects page rank and stuff, I mean, we've seen it with a lot of just our properties, that's a dramatic change. And we're like, whoa, what do we do? And now we have to explain that to our customers that barely know what we're doing anyways. It makes it really challenging. It also, though, for the customers that are educated, keeps driving a lot of business towards us. But I think eventually these internet companies are going to kind of grind that industry to a halt because people are just going to get sick of it, right?
It's terrible. It's just this constant thing that and I like it in some respects because if you have a company like Google, it's going to filter these things out, right? So like how many, shitty directories have you come into or just seen like really bad posts on like Medium? There's all these filters that are now put into place. So when you're creating something of quality and then you're giving that over to your clients, you're raising their standards, right? And their expectation of that delivery, because how many companies have been screwed over by some internet polluter? Like, yeah, well, I saw they were doing this, they were creating those PowerPoint things and they were creating this video and all these things came together and, it's like, no, it wasn't doing anything. It was just literally just putting all this noise out there and all the filters, social media. What's that?
Monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, absolutely. And all these other people repeating that same model. So I think the good news is there's light at the end of the tunnel for this. A lot of that's going to stop, but does it ever go away? I mean, do those things get shut down? Maybe we could look back and see sites from 2007 to 2013 and see the majority of those that have disappeared. But the rule is that we're all taught in SEO is create as much content as you can, because let's say that space is the internet. You want your planet to be as big as possible. So all these little pages that you have are going to use, I can't think of a better term, litter the internet. So you're in all of these different places that people can then find your information and get back to your website.
But with physics, doesn't eventually, it becomes so large it collapses down on itself and becomes a black hole or a Quasar or something bad. I'm pretty sure.
Never seen it, so I don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, there probably is a maintenance cost with the size of your website. If you just fill it with a boatload of junk, I mean, there's got to be an incremental cost for all that. But
we've had clients for 10 years where we've created good content for them, like, sometimes 2-3 posts per week. I mean, there's in thousands and thousands of pages now that they have. They dominate their spaces. And yeah, I mean, that's part of the game. But I think it's also looking at why you do that. You want to be the authority in that topic that you're talking about. And I mean, here's another thing. Like, now you've seen the model. Like, how many people do you know like have a book? I think I've talked about this a little bit before. Like, there's a model. Like, when we look for guests and speakers and things like that, it's because they've written this book. So there's this thing like, oh, the new business card is writing a book. There are so many shitty books out there. Like, it's insane how easy it is to print a book now.
Because there's no barrier to entry. I mean, prior to, let's say 20 years ago, publishers were the gatekeeper. You had to be at some quality to get past the gatekeeper. Now there is no gatekeeper. And that's a great tie into this topic that we're talking about as internet pollution, is that some people just shouldn't write a book.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your credentials? Who's, you talk about this all the time. Who is doing the credentialing? What do you deserve to be putting this content on there? And that's kind of, what we started talking about, is that when you're just outsourcing your content to some content farm in the Philippines or Russia or, wherever, because so many people outsource writing to Upwork. I mean, where is their expertise coming from? Really what their expertise is in is finding keywords to write about. Really, right?
That's it. Yeah.
How many times have you Googled something because you actually wanted like legitimate information about something, and you start reading the article and you're like, oh man, these are one of those shitty marketing. I feel that I'm getting marketed to, because like it happens a ton with recipes. So I've recently started a keto diet, right? So now I'm starting to Google like keto recipes and stuff, and I'll click on a link, and I can tell within like the first paragraph, because it just keeps teasing, and it takes like
long
2
copy
miles, and the recipe finally at the bottom.
So formulaic.
And I'm like, oh, I feel dirty when I read that, and I'm like, how the hell is that a top link? It's crazy.
I did. It's because of all the keywords that it's complete gamification, and I'm not completely innocent. I've experimented with a lot of these things. At one point, I was like, yeah, well, why wouldn't we do that? And then you're just like, well, I like the craft of what we do, so I don't want to be a participant in creating these, shitty posts. But to that, it was a marketing consultation for a buddy of mine that's a motivational speaker. This is a few weeks ago, and I can't remember the guy's name. It's a pretty well-known guy, and he said like, hey, this is what this guy recommends. Should I do this? And I think this is where this topic came from. And I'm like looking at this page, and he's scrolling and scroll. There's so many offers in there. There's so many offers. And I've studied this. There's a few different books on this, and a lot of people that preach this is the way that you're going to do it. And you just scroll and you scroll and you scroll, and it just gets better and better. It's the new infomercial, right? Which those in itself have some qualities. And I'm like, no, there's no way that you should. Do you want all this? Like, is this your audience? Do you go into, when you do a motivational talk, do you just want to just bullshit everybody as much as possible? Because that's all that is. Like, you're literally, you're not giving the value. Whereas if you have the product, you have the copy, people want it, they're going to buy it. And as marketers, maybe we shouldn't be saying this, but I think that's it. If you don't have a good enough quality product that somebody wants to buy it, and you literally have to put the nails to them and grind them into purchasing from you, I firmly believe you should not be selling your thing, which we've turned down businesses. Like, I don't know how to sell what you have because I don't even believe in it or like it for that matter.
But it works because, like I was going to mention earlier, spam, it still works, right?
It's a numbers game to a point.
Right. It has to be working if people are still doing it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's companies now where spam is highly legal, right? But there's companies right now that we can call and say, we want to blast all of these different people, and they're going to figure out a way to get those lists and then put in anything, whether it's pharmaceuticals or mortgages. Yeah, so that still completely exists, and it still works.
What's interesting is that every time I get a contact us form or just see some kind of like data from users, and I see like an AOL address or a yahoo.com or any of those like old school email addresses that, they don't update their spam blocking like Google does. Like, I just imagine like how much spam you must get when you have like a bellsouth.com email address, or so many people have these old school emails, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, how could you deal with that? But then again, just like my Android phone, and I'm sure Apple has the same thing, but when that notice comes, if somebody's calling and it says suspected spam, that's again going back to Google is the gatekeeper of all information. Like, what about if that was actually valuable call, but they just decided that, hey, we don't think you should take this call. We're gonna call it suspected spam. You could use that very, nefariously for politics or anything. Once somebody becomes the gateway to information, that's a dangerous spot to be in.
It's the power. It's always been that way. Publishers, going back, hundreds of years, like whoever had that publication, controlled the message. Right now, yeah, with news, it's the same thing. Like all these places, you have 2, sometimes 3 different divisions of what people are talking about. And it's really hard because the filter, who is the filter when it comes to that?
So tying it into this show, I mean, I guess that's why we're doing what we're doing right here, right? Because we're trying to get the message out, and we're trying to create content that isn't just keyword stuffing. That really, that's what we're talking about. Is if we need to start thinking about how to market for our clients and Digital Mastermind, we've got to go above and beyond just the typical, marketing blog post.
I think it's also the authentic conversation, one between you and myself, and then one between our audience, where they can engage, they can comment, and let us know their opinions on things, or tips too. We're not the be all end all. Just because we both have large size craniums doesn't mean that we know all the ins and outs. So that's where we're going to continue to pull on experts like we have in the past.
So what's the next steps? Like, what is the next trend in inbound marketing, right? Because inbound marketing really has only come around the last 6 to 8 years. I think HubSpot really kind of pushed it forward. How old is HubSpot?
2007.
Right. So, we're talking about a decade of inbound marketing practices and marketing automation. I mean, there's a lot to that. We use SharpSpring and do a lot of marketing automation there.
Mm-hmm.
That world is all based on inbound marketing techniques, which work great at a certain level of client. But, we discuss a lot, you have to have business development people as well if you want to go after the big shots. So what is the future of inbound marketing if the internet pollution or the trend out there is there's just so much? I guess what I'm asking is, brand new client in a competitive keyword field, how do you get them to stand out over the next coming years?
Authenticity. You just if they have the minerals, right, that, or the ingredients, so you can make the recipe, that's going to be the biggest separator. Think about the rise of all the influencers, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram. There's this story that they're telling, and that's the piece that's going to help these companies go to where they want to go up to a point. And there might be a limit, right? And you can't grow greater than these other companies. I don't necessarily know what that looks like. To me, that just logically would say an aggregation of all of these different personalities. But that's going to be the big separator when it comes to competitive markets, because inbound marketing at the end of the day is education, right? Education's always been a great leader to pull in business, whether you were writing a newspaper ad where you're educating them on something, they could subscribe to get more information. Right now, that's the purpose of the internet, right? To spread information that people can educate each other on based on research. So that's not going anywhere. But I think the thing around the corner, like I said, just to kind of put a fine tip on that, it's going to be the personality, the storytelling abilities of companies and brands that's going to be the big separator.
Yeah, and what happens if you've got a client that just doesn't have the minerals, but they want they want the recipe, but you just can't get it out of them? I mean, we all have those clients.
Cost them a ton of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Like, all right, if you got it, you can spend it. If you have a frivolous lawsuit, but you got enough money to grind the opponent into the ground. Like, okay, all right, there's a chance you might win, but it's going to be way more profitable. It's like sales, people, right? You have a lady that's way more likable than another guy. She's going to destroy him, holding all knowledge constant, right? They both are equally experienced because more people like her. She's just going to rule. It's the same thing that's
People
going
like
to happen.
working with people that they like.
Absolutely. So when you take that authenticity and you're telling that, you're able to tell that story across with brands and companies, hence the rise of video, social media, so on and so forth. It's that's going to be the future. And then of course buying influencers and all that stuff, all the other things come into play. Those don't change.
People like buying from businesses they like. I mean, just on the social topics and stuff. I mean, that's why we see so much messaging from big brands when there's a cultural thing going on. I mean, that's big.
Brand identification. I agree, which I think is a great segue into my segment, the Tsourakis topic. Working out some of the kinks still. Gotta love it live. So in this segment today, the Tsourakis topic, I'm going to share my opinions. Typically, it'll be in sales and marketing. Sometimes it'll get a little bit more emotional. But right now, I want to talk about outsourcing work, right? So companies, as you begin to grow, as ours has, we are in a unique position. We outsource a lot. I wouldn't say a lot. We outsource some of our work, but we're also a big outsource resource for a lot of other companies, right? So they say like, all right, we want you guys to do our development. We got you guys to do our SEO, right? So one thing that I've noticed on our own account is the requirements that we create when we send them over to somebody that we want to work with, as well as when we receive them from another company. We hold in all of these details for some reason. Maybe it's an insecurity, or we just believe that they're more advanced than we think they are, and we don't share that information. And I saw this because we were outsourcing some technical copy to somebody, like, all right, these are the details. But we didn't give them the entire ball of information that we had. And on the side with the other agencies, especially when we're doing dev, we never get all the requirements when it's like design, like, oh yeah, well, we just need 2 templates. We can't see all of these fundamental things that are integral to really quoting the project, delivering on an expectation, and making sure that it's done right based on the way that we like to do our work. So if there's one takeaway you could have here, it's something that we're doing internally, take away the way that you create the specifications, process, and requirements for working with people that you're outsourcing it to. They're not in your internal communications. They may not completely jive with your culture yet, but take a hard look at it. Speak with them and say like, hey, are we giving you enough information? Because we've done this and we're now starting to see the fruits of that, where people are like, oh, we could use this. We could see more into the marketing plan. We could see more based on what you guys are trying to accomplish. So I'm hoping to report maybe in the next month, this is like a huge gangbusters ROI turning event. So with that, David, I'd like to pass it over to you, to your new segment, which is By the Numbers.
All right. Well, by the numbers, what I'd like to bring on is, or my topic is going to be about, currently right now, a lot of people are talking about the CARES Act for business. And with my segment that I'd like to run with weekly is, it's going to be about calculations, numbers, spreadsheets. I mean, things that I use all the time. So I want to talk about the CARES Act, the EIDL loan, which is for most companies a maximum loan of up to $150,000, which is a 30-year loan at 3.75%. So, what I have here is an amortization chart that really breaks down what the EIDL loan is going to look like. Now, I've adjusted the principal slightly just to mimic that period, because the loan really doesn't get paid back for I think 11 months. But for the basic calculations, we're talking 3.75% rate over 30 years. Now, again, this is the EIDL loan, which comes from the SBA, from the federal government. So what we have here is a typical amortization chart, and look at the total interest which is paid back over time of the 30 years. Now, 30 years is a long time when it comes to a business loan. Like, can you even imagine still being in business in 30 years? I mean, we've only been around for 10 years, and 10 years ago, I would have never imagined we made it this far. So, a 30-year loan is a little crazy. $100,000 in interest payments, a little crazy. So what I wanted to showcase is, if we look at the second sheet here, and by just paying an extra $1,284 to make the payment a nice round number of $2,000 a month, the total interest drops from $103,000 to $22,000 in total interest. And also, we can scroll down here and see that you pay off the loan in 89 months rather than 360. I mean, that's a drop of 2/3 of your payments just disappear when you pay that much extra. And when you're getting a $150,000 loan from the government and you're paying back $2,000 a month, that's pretty reasonable. Now, let's take it to the extreme. Now, you've taken this $150,000 loan, and you're in prep for the worst that can happen, but it doesn't happen to you. Your clients don't disappear, and you want to aggressively get this loan paid off because you may not need it. Now, if you have the money to just pay it off and give it right back, great, do that. But remember, this is a 3.75% loan from the government. You're pretty much not going to get a better rate than that anywhere else. So if you could use the capital and the cash flow to create safety for your business, you want to take advantage of that. But when you have to start paying it back after 11 months, if you can add an extra $4,284 for a nice round $5,000 a month repayment schedule, your total interest drops to $8,233. I mean, that's like 8% of what you were paying. You went from $103,000 in interest to $8,000. That's nothing. And then spread that's only 33 payments. You're in less than 3 years, you don't owe the government anymore, while still having that cash flow, and you can draw down that slowly over time. So, I just wanted to showcase in my segment of By the Numbers what it looks like to get that SBA loan, the EIDL, along with that $10,000 grant, and what it looks like to repay it, because it's going to come sooner rather than later that businesses that got that are going to, be a little taken by surprise, like, oh, wait, I got to start paying this. This, again, is the EIDL loan that doesn't have the loan forgiveness. This is a straight SBA loan, which, let me add a little information here, is that this is for businesses that this is their first initial SBA loan. It's really great to actually establish that relationship with the SBA. Let's imagine in 8 years that we run into some other issue, another pandemic or any other kind of financial situation. Having that pre-established relationship with the SBA is going to prove invaluable. So there is going to be some advantage to establish that payment record with the SBA, so they can see that pattern of repayment that isn't erratic. I think for the businesses that just pay it back lump sum in 11 months, it's not really going to establish that trust when you need it, because I do know from other business owners that we've talked to, the ones that had the pre-existing relationship with the SBA got funded faster. They got through the process sooner. And, for us, this was our first opportunity, and it took a long time. So, there's definite advantage to maintaining that relationship. And on that note, that's By the Numbers. That's what we got.
Boom. Not like a little spreadsheet porn to tie things
up. That's me. I love it. Worksheets.
Yeah. So, do you have any numbers on like how many people took out that loan? Because that's a big chunk of money, and I'm just wondering, what's the probability of a bunch of businesses that have potentially never taken out money and then their ability to pay that back?
I don't have any specific concrete numbers, but I mean, the thing about the EIDL loan is that it is separate than the PPP stuff, because the SBA loan, you do have to pay back. There's it's very similar to the 2008 financial crisis when the government bailed out, what is it, AIG?
Yeah.
They bailed out, I think, GE Financial as well. I mean, they made money.
And some car companies.
Yeah.
Chevy and whatnot.
They made money on those transactions technically because they were at interest and they must be paid back.
Right.
So here, The government is doling out a bunch of money to try to save the economy, and that money is going to come back at some kind of interest rate. I mean, it's
like government loans. Is there like what institution is responsible for doing the collecting, doing the books for this? Is it the SBA?
The SBA. For this, it's the SBA.
Got it.
So, you will have to pay it back. Now, I could see a future situation where the Small Business Lobbying Institute, I'm sure there's a lobbying arm out there for small businesses, maybe the chamber or something, but they're in a future bill could ask for, forgiveness for the SBA loan, because I'm sure there's a lot of people putting pressure on the representatives to do that. But, I don't think you should take it if you're not prepared to pay it back. I mean, this is a lifeline. It's a great way to improve cash flow. I mean, we talked on previous episodes that, cash flow during an emergency is important to keep your business running. And this is a great, cheap way to inject cash flow into your business and to protect it from future issues.
As long as you pay it back on time.
Right. And then, I mean, I'm sure the risk on the government side is how many of these organizations are going to go bankrupt and then just in general don't pay it back. I mean, I think you had to personally, I don't know if you had to personally guarantee it.
Because in the past, from what I understood with SBA, is like it was super collateralized. They wanted your house, your car, and that's why it was so secure for them, because at the end of the day, they're walking away with something of value. And in this case, that's not the scenario.
Yeah, and I think that's the point of why I wanted to bring this topic to my segment By the Numbers, is because, I don't plan on for Oyova holding on that debt forever. I'm probably going to operate on the 3-year plan if we don't utilize the cash flow. Now, if things change in 6 months, we're looking at a different economy, we might be paying on the 30-year plan. And that's a survival mode. We're going to pay as little as possible until the economy changes back in, favor of paying more of. But if things remain constant and we're solid, I'm going to be looking at the 3-year plan so we can go from $100,000 to $8,000 in interest. I mean, that I would like $92,000 in my pocket rather than the government's pocket. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Even a little bit more, just trying to continually step it up. All right, now appreciate that. And on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and end today's episode. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us for the first live DMG. The Climb is the name of our show. And look forward to tuning in again next week at the same time. And please like, share, follow wherever you see this. It would mean the world. And then just comment. Like, tell us what it is, what your comments are. Like, what do you want to see? What do you want to hear?
What did we say that was wrong? I mean, I'm sure we made mistakes.
I made mistakes. Dave probably made a couple mistakes.
Yeah, my numbers were wrong.
What's that?
I said my numbers were probably wrong. Somebody catch me on some
get someone there, connect the math. Call us out for maybe some spam that we threw out there. In any event, thank you so much, everybody. Really enjoy, being a part of your morning, and look forward to the next time. Take care. Bye now.